Welcome back, and thanks for joining me for episode 3 of the series, The Fabric of a Revolution, Recreating a 13-Star American Flag. I'm Holly, a fiber artist, and your host. During the first half of 2026, I will be undertaking a project to recreate a 13-star American flag while demonstrating the techniques available at the time of the American Revolution. I also want to use the project to investigate the people who would have been involved in these processes at that time in history. During the last episode, I spun sheep's wool into threads needed to make the cloth for the majority of the flag. I thought you might want to see how that is going, so I'll give a quick update. I spent last month spinning a Romney fleece into wool threads to make my fabric. After spinning the threads, they are wound off of the spinning wheel bobbin and onto a tool called a reel. As the arms go around, it turns this gear. Each round is 2 yards long and is referred to as a thread. The gear is set up so that after 40 revolutions, it makes a snapping sound. That tells you that you have reeled 80 yards. Every time it snaps, I will tie a piece of string around that bundle, and then at the end, I can count my little bundles to know how much thread I have. In the 18th century, they referred to this bundle as a knot. And according to Old Sturbridge Village, 7 knots makes a skein. So a skein would have been 560 yards. You can tuck this knowledge away for later because in today's episode, you are going to see reference to how many skeins, knots, and threads people spun in a day. After reeling, the threads still have a lot of twist energy to them, and they coil up, looking like a pile of ramen noodles. So I soak them in hot water and then stretch them while they dry to set the twist. The skein on the left is what it looks like before soaking and drying. The skein on the right is after soaking and drying. I was able to spin all the threads I need for this project, and that is where I stand on wool production so far. Now, if you recall, the stars of the flag I am recreating were not made of wool, but of a fabric called linen, which comes from a plant called flax. This episode focuses on flax and linen. I will explain the process of turning the flax plant into linen threads, then demonstrate the spinning of flax while I share some history of flax farming and linen spinning in America during the 18th century. Recall, if you will, that in the 18th century, all cloth was made from either plant or animal fibers. Flax is one plant that can be used to make thread, and those threads can be woven to make cloth called linen. The stem of the flax plant contains long, silky fibers that can be spun similar to how one spins sheep's wool fibers into threads. Those fibers must be removed from the rest of the plant, including the outer skin of the stem and the tough inner stem. And this is a lengthy and labor-intensive process with its own particular vocabulary, as you will see. At least in New England, flax seeds are sown in May. Growing them densely packed together helps produce tall, straight plants with little branching, which is what we want. Plants are harvested in July by pulling them from the ground, roots and all. The harvested plants are left to dry in the field in stacks called stooks, and then the seed pods are harvested from the top. After that, the fibers can be harvested. The first step is to partially rot the plant, a process called retting. It can be done by soaking the plants in water or leaving them laying on the ground. Then the plants are dried again before the stems are crushed in a process called breaking. This breaks the tough center stalk into bits, referred to as boom, that can then be separated away from the desirable stem fibers. Swingling, also called scutching, uses a wooden sword-like tool to beat those broken bits of stem away from the long fibers. After scutching, The fibers are drawn through a series of metal combs in a process called hackling or heckling. This removes any remaining boon and the short fibers, leaving just the long, strong, silky fibers, which is called line flax. Line flax is then wound into a bunch called a strick for storage until you're ready to spin it into threads or for sewing or weaving. I have here some flax that has been retted and dried, but hasn't been taken through any other steps of processing. And here I have some line flax that I purchased, which is ready for spinning. If you compare this with the wool that I spun in the last video, you will see that it is much longer than the wool. It would be very difficult to hold that long fiber in one hand and draft out just the few fibers at a time that I want to spin, like I did with the wool. In fact, flax is not held by the hand, but on a tool called a distaff when you're spinning. Spinning wheels like this one from the 18th century had distaffs built in. Once the distaff is dressed or loaded with flax, the spinner can sit at the wheel and pull out just a few fibers at a time, letting the wheel add twist to the flax. Once the flax has twist, it is then called linen. Now I'm going to get to spinning some flax, and while I do, I will share what I learned about who was growing and spinning flax in America during the 18th century. Flax has been used for making linen cloth since ancient times and throughout many cultures. Think of the Egyptians thousands of years ago, for one example. In the American colonies, flax was being cultivated at least as early as the mid-1600s, as its harvest and spinning is mentioned in the laws of the Massachusetts colony from that time. During the 18th century, flax was being grown on family farms as well as some southern plantations. A farmer from New Hampshire, Matthew Patten, was born in Ireland 1719 and came to the American colonies in 1728. He settled in Bedford, New Hampshire, and held a variety of jobs, including Justice of the Peace and probate judge. He kept a diary in which he recorded his business dealings, travels, and the management of his family farm. He grew rye, potatoes, corn, peas, and relevant to this video, he grew flax. There are diary entries of growing and processing and spinning flax that span over 25 years. His entries show many instances of him getting help from members of the community with all stages of flax processing. Different people were helping Matthew Patten spin flax as well. Throughout the years, he mentions a good number of people all coming to his house to spin. Flax was also used as a commodity for trading. He mentions being paid in flax for his work and paying others in flax for their efforts. At this time in history, there were different demographics of people in the colony spinning flax, and different reasons for spinning it. There were rural farming families like that of Matthew Patten and the women in the community that spun for him. These people were likely spinning flax for use in their homes and for local manufacture of cloth. Then there were individuals who were indentured servants, like this healthy young Irish servant woman, who was an excellent spinner, fond of the employ, and willing to go in the country. And there were enslaved individuals on southern plantations who were sometimes made to grow flax and spin and weave to make their own clothing. You see, despite the fact that enslaved plantation workers seemed to get only one or possibly two outfits a year, their clothing needs still required a great deal of cloth. While I came across evidence that linen production was relatively new to some southern plantations, as we have discussed previously, people had been spinning linen for quite a while throughout the American colonies. In the lead-up to the American Revolution, spinning flax became a way for free women to take a direct part in promoting American liberty. To understand the connection between spinning and the American Revolution, let's review what was going on at the time between England and the colonies. During the 1760s and 1770s, the British government passed a series of laws that regulated trade and taxes. These included the Sugar Act, the Currency Act, the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts. There were a number of things that were economically impacting the colonists. The colonists saw these acts as increasing the hardship they were experiencing at the time. You can see from these British shipping records that New England was spending more money on British goods than they were taking in revenue by selling goods to England. Around the time of the Stamp Act crisis, women saw the opportunity to get involved in politics, using the skills and influence at their disposal. Remember, at this time in history, societal roles were very gender-specific, and women had no official leadership roles in society. However, women had for a long while, in many cultures for much of human history, had an influence over cultural identities and affiliations through the textiles they created or purchased. In today's American culture, we may not appreciate the power that one has at their disposal through their choice in textile production and consumption. But during the 18th century, especially during that time of societal and economic turmoil, many women chose to protest Britain's rules and support non-importation and non-consumption by making and wearing their own textiles. This is sometimes referred to as the homespun movement. Newspaper articles highlighting the gathering of spinners for a spinning match, or a spinning bee, became commonplace during this time. For example, the Newport Mercury published an article highlighting 2 spinning matches held in Bristol, Rhode Island, to do some honor to the misses concerned and be instrumental in diffusing a spirit of industry through the government. In a rare occurrence, the newspaper even published the names of the women involved and how much they spun in that day. On April 7, 1766, the Boston Gazette reported a gathering of spinners in Providence, Rhode Island. These Daughters of Liberty, as they were called, quote, exhibited a fine example of industry by spinning from sunrise until dark, and displayed a spirit for saving their sinking country rarely to be found among persons of more age and experience. Before they separated, they unanimously resolved that the Stamp Act was unconstitutional, that they would purchase no more British manufactures unless it be repealed. The Stamp Act was indeed repealed before the end of 1766, but other acts of the British Parliament continued to put economic pressure on the colonists. Newspaper articles like this one from the Boston Postboy and Advertiser, November 16, 1767, spoke of becoming more self-sufficient and less dependent on British imports, recommending to every farmer the growth of hemp and flax, that the linen manufacturers may be especially promoted and encouraged by all ranks of people. And in 1768, Boston merchants wrote and signed an article of agreement to boycott British goods for a full calendar year. And women, in their capacity to control the consumption of cloth for themselves and their families, continued to hold public gatherings, spending all day spinning together, and quite intentionally not drinking tea, to demonstrate their commitment to home production of textiles, and to influence the opinions and resolve of others participating in non-consumption of British goods. 1769 saw a flurry of newspaper articles published, recounting the activities of these spinning bees. In 1769, the August 24th issue of the supplement to the New York Journal reported on 8 different spinning bees involving women as young as 9 and as old as 70 or 80. Articles like this one from the Boston Gazette highlight the 45 ladies in Lexington, Massachusetts, that collectively spun 602 knots of linen, and if a knot is 80 yards, that's over 48,000 yards of linen thread in one day. These articles praised the women for their efforts, one saying, "Were the gentlemen really as sincere and as much in earnest in promoting frugality, industry, and all other virtues as the ladies are, there is not the least doubt but we should soon free ourselves from the burdens with which we are now oppressed, and lay the foundation of American liberty on a basis not to be shaken by any power on earth." So I hope you can appreciate that during the decade leading up to the American Revolution, for free white women, spinning took on a new meaning, a peaceful and influential protest against what were seen as unreasonable acts by the British government. In addition to being practical, spinning became a symbol of the values of the time, those of self-determination, industriousness, and resistance to unjust laws. And before I close this episode, I want to acknowledge all the reference librarians and museum curators who have helped me with my research for this project. Museums and library collections around the world, especially the librarians and curators who manage them and make them accessible to the public, are an invaluable resource. Thanks for joining me, and see you next time.